In Hitman 2, you can pick up all kinds of items, but one of them felt like a secret from the developers. Players randomly grabbed a briefcase and all of a sudden realized it was a heat-seeking missile. It would even follow NPCs around corners. This thing was seriously lethal, so of course the devs stepped in to quickly patch it. Fans were immediately upset about this. I mean, the whole point of Hitman is to kill people in creative ways, but here's where the devs got clever. They took all the feedback, redesigning this into an actual weapon known as the Executive Briefcase Mark II. And to really nail the joke, they made it slower than the glitch ever was. But one of the most famous myths in video game history is trying to stop the train in GTA 5. The community was obsessed with trying to figure this out, and at the time the consensus was that you couldn't stop it. But something that people never talk about is how a glitch 11 years ago actually let online players stop the train. Now, Rockstar patched this pretty quick, and it would lead to years worth of YouTube videos trying to replicate the glitch. This became so iconic that in 2024 they decided to turn this into a feature. A brand new heist that not only lets you stop the train, but also drive and crash it too. But sometimes a bug is so iconic that you can't afford to remove it. Like in Skyrim, where giants can straight up slap you into oblivion.
I just got punted to another moon.
Back in 2011, this was the funniest thing ever, and players could not get enough. Even though it absolutely destroyed your progress, Bethesda knew removing it would cause an outrage. And that's why over a decade later, it can still be found in-game.
Right. LOL.
And over in Borderlands 2, something is kinda off about Tiny Tina. Yeah, her eye was not meant to be freaking out like that. It was a total glitch, and yet the devs thought it was hilarious. So in Borderlands 3, they decided to make this part of Tina's character, officially redesigning her with a lazy eye.
What is that?
A bit of a lesser-known game is Wanted Raccoon, where you basically play as one who loves committing crimes. But back in the early playtest days, fans had a huge piece of feedback. Their tail was sticking out of the box while hiding. Now, obviously, the clipping through kind of ruined the immersion, but instead of simply fixing it, the devs came up with a genius solution.
Nice.
Pretty adorable, unlike Minecraft's most iconic enemy, which was never even supposed to exist. Creepers are one of the unofficial mascots at this point and helped launch the game to become one of the biggest things on the planet. But I bet you didn't know they were actually a total accident. Notch was trying to design a pig, but accidentally got the dimensions wrong, leading to a super tall and skinny creature with 4 legs. Thankfully for us, he ended up liking this mistake and redesigned it into the creeper that we're all terrified of.
So then we come upstairs. We have this little area right here. I don't really know.
Now, I cannot believe this was a real thing, but it turns out World of Warcraft had a glitch that was so bad the government had to study it. Back in 2005, they added a debuff that could be transferred between players, but it was only meant to happen at a single location. Almost immediately, a glitch took over, letting people spread this debuff to anyone in the game. And before they knew it, they had an actual pandemic on their hands. Blizzard tried desperately to stop it, and everything failed, eventually forcing them to push a hard reset. This bug was so unbelievable that actual researchers studied it to see how people would react to a real pandemic. Obvious foreshadowing aside, players thought this was the coolest thing ever, and Blizzard clearly agreed. So in future expansions, they created intentional pandemics just for fun, which is pretty awkward considering one of them actually happened a few years ago. But a glitch you could use to your advantage was in Crash Bandicoot. While fighting Tiny Tiger, all you had to do was stand in the corner and you could totally cheese the fight. So when the remake came out, fans were excited to try this again. I mean, surely the devs wouldn't make the same mistake twice, right? Well, that's when we all got a taste of karma. Sometimes it makes no sense to turn bugs into features, like in Red Dead Redemption. Back in the day, the game had one of the creepiest glitches of all time, with players coming across the donkey lady.
Now, the donkey woman likes to take us places. As you can see, she's very fast on her feet. She literally has a horse's mouth coming out of her face.
So when Rockstar came back to make Red Dead 2, they just knew they had to reference this. And that's when players discovered an even creepier skeleton working on a farm. Right from the skull, we could immediately tell this was Donkey Lady. But when you think about it, this is a prequel, so her being dead doesn't make a lot of sense. Interesting choice. But there's a glitch out there that spawned an entire genre of video games. While making Street Fighter 2, a Capcom employee noticed an unintended feature inside of the fighting animations. If you were fast enough, you could cancel your current move and start another attack, creating combos. This would go on to affect every fighting game in history, making one of the most influential bugs of all time. And Bethesda was just as surprised when players outsmarted them in Skyrim. They realized you could put a bucket on someone's head and it would block them from seeing you, letting you steal all their stuff with no consequences. And what's even crazier is that the devs never expected this.
No one thought to do that. All our QA, all the hundreds of hours, thousands, tens of hundreds of thousands of hours we collectively played that game.
Taking things from buckets to pans, it kind of reminds me of PUBG's insane feature. The most powerful melee weapon isn't a sword or a hammer, it's the frying pan, and in the early days it wiped out enemies in a single hit. But during development, the devs wanted to add collisions so people could deflect grenades with a well-timed hit. So they dropped the update and called it a day, only to wake up the next morning and realize players discovered something ridiculous. This collision accidentally turned frying pans into bulletproof shields.
You just shot your pan? How did that happen to you?
Fans were in love with this, a total accident which ended up becoming one of the game's staple features. And most of us hate when something's buggy, but if glitches didn't exist, neither would the biggest game on the planet. In 1995, some developers were working on a game called Race and Chase, and you could choose to play as cops or robbers. Except, there was this glitch that caused the police to chase you aggressively, and playtesters had a blast with this. It was so fun, they scrapped the playable cops completely and reworked the entire game around escaping them, naming their new project Grand Theft Auto. Now, it's literally the most well-known game on the planet, and in later titles like GTA 4, they'd keep the idea of embracing glitches. In fact, this swing set might be the most iconic bug in gaming history.
Whoa!
Right.
Oh my god.
Nicknamed the swing set of death, this would ultimately become way too popular for Rockstar to get rid of, forcing them to keep it in over 16 years later. But did you know that TF2's most famous class started out as a glitch? Yeah, in 1996 they created this entire franchise as a mod for Quake. However, the devs found a bug which caused players' names to have the enemy team's colors. It caused a ton of confusion, and yet this inspired an idea. What if they created a class that could do this on purpose? And that's when the Spy was born. And while we're on the topic of Quake, this game had a bug of its own. When players started shooting rockets at their feet, they realized it wouldn't hurt them, and instead it launched them into the air. Within seconds, a light bulb went off in the community. This was an insane way to get around, becoming the classic strategy known as rocket jumping. And Fortnite had a very similar moment with their RPGs. In 2017, players were just messing around until they accidentally landed on a moving rocket. This was a total glitch, and yet the concept of riding missiles was way too good to delete. So Epic decided to keep it in, and not only that, but the idea expanded across every throwable in the game. Now players could ride on things like medkits, shield pots, and they even turned the feature into a loading screen. But over in Crash Team Racing, people were driving around as Penta Penguin only to hear an unfinished voice line.
Penguin Ye 1, Penguin Ye 2.
I don't know about you guys, but I do not think that was Penta Penguin. It was definitely a placeholder line that was never meant to be heard, and yet the devs accidentally left it in. This mistake was so ridiculous that when Crash Team Racing got a remake in 2019, players were shocked to hear this. And personally, I love what the devs did with the Zelda series. In Link to the Past, there was a glitch with the net item, letting you deflect Aghanim's magic straight back at him without using the Master Sword. Instead of being all strict about it, Nintendo decided it was awesome and made it one of the series' longest running jokes. In Ocarina of Time, the empty bottles can deflect Ganon's magic. In Twilight Princess, the fishing rod causes Ganondorf to zone out. And even Skyward Sword's bug net forces Demise to stare at it. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Still not as insane as the ridiculous feature in Crusader Kings 3. The developers of this game are clearly big fans of Dwarf Fortress. And back in the day, there was this bug where fish would do 3 times as much damage as an unnamed dwarf. This let them absolutely slaughter humans, and the Crusader Kings devs must have found this hilarious. When it came to releasing the third game, they made an ultra rare event that can happen to your empire. There's a tiny chance that carps can actually eat your family members. What? But there is one glitch that I guarantee you've encountered while gaming without even knowing it. While developing Gradius, one of the programmers found the game way too difficult, and because he had the power to do so, he created a cheat code to give him all the power-ups. Only problem was, when the game released, he totally forgot to remove this. And players would soon discover that up, up, down, down, left, right, BA would hand them the ultimate set of cheats, the Konami code. And those were video game bugs that became features. It's been Sammy. Keep it here on T5G.